It is entirely possible to memorize the words of a sacred text, close the cover, and walk directly past someone in desperate need. This specific contradiction, knowing the right answers but failing to live them out, is the exact problem addressed in the book of James. This reference page outlines the historical context. The text was written by James, widely accepted as the brother of Jesus and a leader in the Jerusalem church. He is writing to Jewish Christians who have been scattered outside of Palestine. These were people living in hostile, unfamiliar territory under the constant threat of persecution. In his opening chapter, James issues a sharp warning. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is deceiving themselves. He compares it to a person looking at their own face in a mirror, turning away and instantly forgetting what they look like. The reflection fades the moment they break eye contact. Intellectual agreement with a set of theological ideas is entirely insufficient on its own. If faith exists at all, it must result in a visible, outward life that actively serves others. The true depth of a person's character is rarely visible in moments of comfort. James argues that faith is immediately tested and exposed when an individual faces severe hardship and multifaceted trials. When these periods of intense pressure arrive, they force a reaction. A person can respond with bitter anger, or they can choose joyful, steadfast perseverance. James writes that choosing to endure these trials is exactly what builds maturity, burning away impurities until a person is complete and not lacking anything. He defines what God accepts as pure and faultless religion with two specific requirements: keeping oneself from being polluted by the corruption of the world, and actively stepping in to care for vulnerable orphans and widows in their distress. External pressure does not invent our personal flaws. It simply burns away our polite exterior and exposes the raw material that was already hiding behind our claims of faith. James sets up a highly specific scenario. A man walks into a meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes and is immediately escorted to the best seat in the room. A poor man in filthy clothes follows him and is told to sit on the floor by someone's feet. Making distinct judgments based on a person's wealth or social status is a direct violation of what James calls the royal law. This is the scriptural command to love your neighbor exactly as you love yourself. To show special attention to the rich while dismissing the poor makes a person a judge with evil thoughts. Look at how this study guide summarizes the central mega-theme of the text. James contrasts empty claims of faith with a commitment to love and serve others. If someone is freezing and starving, wishing them well and telling them to stay warm does absolutely nothing for their physical needs. Faith, by itself, if not accompanied by action, is completely dead. We can claim to hold all the correct private beliefs, but those beliefs are entirely invalidated if our hands refuse to serve the marginalized people standing right in front of us. A massive, sprawling forest can be set completely on fire by a single microscopic spark. James uses this vivid physical reality to explain the terrifying power of human speech. Though the tongue is a remarkably small part of the human body, it operates like a restless evil full of deadly poison. It possesses the unique capacity to corrupt a person's entire life, steering them toward destruction, just as a tiny rudder steers a massive ship into a storm. Speech driven by bitter envy and selfish ambition is earthly and unspiritual. In contrast, the wisdom that comes down from heaven produces a distinctly different vocabulary, one that is pure, peace-loving, impartial, and full of mercy. Fresh water and salt water cannot flow from the exact same spring. It is a hypocritical impossibility to use our mouths to sing praises to God, and then use those exact same vocal cords to curse human beings made in His image. All the external fights, quarrels, and divisions within a community have a single origin point. They stem directly from internal, selfish desires constantly battling within the human heart. We covet things we cannot have, and so we fight to take them. This annotated margin captures the problem. Aligning with the world's value systems automatically puts a person in direct enmity with God. The required response is found just a few lines lower. Completely humble yourself before Him, trusting Him to lift you up. This required humility extends to how we view our own futures. James points out the sheer arrogance of drafting complex business plans for tomorrow to make money, while ignoring the fact that human life is as fragile and brief as a morning mist that vanishes in the sun. True peace never arrives by forcing our own way. It only comes through the absolute surrender of our personal ambitions, plans, and pride to God's ultimate authority. In his closing chapter, James turns his attention to wealthy oppressors who have exploited workers and lived in self-indulgence. He warns them that the gold and silver they have hoarded are corroding, and the cries of the laborers they defrauded have reached the ears of the Lord. To those suffering under this oppression, the mandate is patient endurance. They are told to stand firm and wait for the Lord's coming, much like a farmer who plants a seed and must wait patiently for the autumn and spring rains to produce a crop. While they wait, they are instructed to lean heavily on their community. If anyone is sick or in trouble, they are to call the elders of the church to pray over them, confessing their sins to each other so that they may be healed. Maintaining an eternal perspective breaks the illusion of earthly wealth. It strips away our greed and anchors us in a community built on earnest prayer and mutual confession. James does not allow the reader to remain a passive observer. It demands that reading directly translates into doing. The mirror is being held up. Has your everyday life, your speech, and your treatment of the vulnerable actually been altered by the theology you claim to believe? The instructions are laid out. Stand firm in the middle of trials. Refuse to show favoritism to the wealthy. Control the destructive fire of your tongue, and submit your pride entirely to God. The undeniable conclusion of the text remains as sharp today as it was in the first century, that faith without works is utterly dead.